Hey friends, it's Callie. We're going to be going over how I made a Aerith cosplay from Final Fantasy VII. If you're not super familiar with it, it's a really fun game and I don't know what else to really say. My cat is biting me right now. I made this cosplay for SakuraCon of 2024 this past year. Stop biting me, dude! Biting is not cool. 1 out of 10. Love you. Aerith has been one of my dream cosplays since I was like a teenager. She is so lovable and so positive, and if you guys know me or want to know something about me, I love really positive, bubbly characters with dresses. So I could not go wrong with cosplaying Aerith. So first things first is the pattern. I used a Aerith inspired pattern by a creator on Etsy. This was super helpful and it was really nice to not have to make the pattern myself. I didn't have any trouble with pattern fit and issues. The pattern did have a size chart so you could follow that. This was the second digital pattern I'd ever used, and I loved the instructions because the first digital pattern I'd ever used, I actually didn't realize that someone had to, there's technicalities in taking together a pattern, but there's like an outline around each page, right? I didn't realize the way in which you had to put it together, but this pattern's instructions were lovely. The reason why I ended up having only 4 days to make this cosplay, I was sampling fabric and trying to get fabric in advance. I think the fabric was one of the harder parts of it. So I actually, from a few different fabric sites, Mood, Fabrics Wholesale, Joann's, I don't think I tried any others, and Spoonflower. I tried a variety of custom fabric, textured fabrics, and just a whole variety of things to figure out what fabric I wanted to use for the outer layer of her dress and her jacket. 2 things that I want to go over, which I'll be doing throughout this video. I'm going to be listing the things that I wish I could have done different, things that I'd do in a crunch, and things I would do if this was a competition piece, because I do cosplay contests, but I haven't actually done any this year because I've had a goal to try new techniques, try new skills, and I always stick in my comfort zone when I do cosplay contests because I don't want to do wrong. I don't want to do bad. So I got so many fabrics, and I'm not too familiar with dyeing fabrics, although I do like bright, vibrant colors. So I knew I wanted a vibrant pink. So in the end, what I ended up doing was just getting a custom, and I got this custom chiffon off of Spoonflower in the end, which is like printed with the white shapes and the pink background. Because all the other fabric samples I tried, just nothing was close enough, and I wanted it to be recognizable as Aerith. And then for the jacket, I actually realized too late that it was a red denim. I don't think my machine could have handled a denim either, so I actually used a micro suede. But I still think it looked nice, and I think it had a decent sheen to it. And I lined it with a darker red material. And at the bottom here, I actually bought this trim from Joann's in a bind because I was originally going to make it, and then I started to run low on time. Like I said, one of those things you do con crunch, but it looked amazing, so I'm actually really glad that it worked out this way. I got this embroidered ribbon material, and I also got this ribbon. I believe her actual costume, I forgot because I made this, but I believe her actual costume has a different patterned ribbon, so I think it still looked really good. Before continuing, let's talk about Spoonflower really quick. It is a site that allows you to, I realized I hadn't talked about this. It's a site that allows you to basically take a design file. I don't know if it has to be like an SVG file or anything. I haven't actually uploaded a design there before. I used like Joann's custom tool for my Heartthrob Caitlyn cosplay. I pointed that way, but that's not open. Spoonflower, there was a lot of, like, if you search Aerith or Aerith, the there's a whole bunch of fabrics that come up. I'll see if I can link the specific one I got because I ordered like 5 different samples. Some of them had a weird grayness around the little white brocade looking designs or damask. I don't know what you call those, that print. Some of them didn't, and some of them were like orangey pink, the best quality one I'd found. So I recommend if you see several versions of something, if you're not making it yourself, just order like a little sample of each. Always leave yourself the time to. Quick note on Con Crunch, by the way, guys. I made this cosplay back in March. It is now September, but I had a revelation in between then and now. I no longer crunch my cosplays. So a note, some things that were done here were done because I was trying to, oh my god, the con's in one day. So keep that in mind when you're seeing some things. There might be some corners that I cut because of that, but I'll point them out and I'll let you know that you probably shouldn't do that. I think it's best in cosplay to have a mindset of, if I have the cosplay, I do. If I don't have the cosplay, I don't. You know, I was in high school in like 2016, right? So it's this whole era of like, you hear older cosplayers be like, I'm con crunching, I'm con crunching. It was just already such a part of the culture, I think, by the time I was getting into it. So I'd never thought of anything else. Does that make sense? Like, I never thought, oh, what if I just don't con crunch? Because everybody seemed to always be doing it at the last minute. Quick note on con crunch, don't do it. It's not good for your sewing skills. Since stopping doing it, I have gotten a lot better sewing, and my quality of my stuff is, I say it's like a Nordstrom quality of sewing. That's where I like rank it. Like, it's very comfy, it's very wearable. This is why you shouldn't con crunch. You don't know your own abilities until you're not in a rush. So, the jacket. I followed the pattern's instructions. This suede didn't hold the crease right there very well, but it's still folded over quite nicely. Where should I start with this? Start with the zippers, because I think that's where the pattern started. These are actually functional pockets. Like, I don't know if you could see the pocket part. No, you can't. But you can actually stuff things in there. I was putting my little cosplay business card kind of things that I hand out at conventions in there, and that was really convenient. So basically, what you do to get that is you take the zipper, and then I fold it over. Okay, so if these are the 2 pieces of fabric, I folded them over and then put them on top of the zipper, and then I sewed on top of both sides with my zipper foot to get this. And then you have this nice little pocket. And I made both of those before actually making the whole piece. Like, there's some things I do on an individual piece of fabric before I sew it into the whole jacket. There's also, I never noticed this until I was at the convention, which is really funny because it's on the top of her shoulder and a lot of reference images are from the front and from the back, but she actually has stars on the top of her jacket shoulder. I noticed those once I was at the meetup at SoccerCon. I was like, oh, I don't have stars on the top of my shoulder. So there's a note, but there's like a separate panel of fabric right up here underneath the collar. I hand sewed this part down with this little button because it looks like it's a part that's supposed to button. It's lined. So to line it, what I did is I actually made the lining with about like, there's like a good, what is it, like 4 inches of material, so it wouldn't, like, the lining wouldn't show. I did top stitch it. Since then I have figured out bottom stitching. I do recommend bottom stitching. It looks a lot cleaner and a lot more beautiful. There's like a puffiness to using micro suede too that I don't really prefer, and I don't think with denim that would have been the issue, but it still looks okay and I like the texture to it. It still feels very jacket-ish. My battery died for a second. Okay. To flip it inside out the lining, I actually had it open in this middle of the back seam, and then I hand sewed it closed once I flipped it inside out. Some of this stuff, if you guys need any extra videos on tutorials, whatever, let me know. I am okay with making tutorials if you like want to learn a sewing thing that maybe I know. It might also be a learning thing for me. I don't mind learning things for other people. And on these little belt details on the back, this was my first time doing buckles right. I didn't realize on my Hilda cosplay ages ago you had to like interface them, and I did that this time. Suede pieces interfaced, so then they're stiffer. Interfacing, it's like an iron-on material, or not iron-on, depending on how you feel that day. An iron-on material where you can stiffen a fabric. It's usually in your collar or your shirt or like sleeve collars. They're not cool. Anyways, so I put grommets in these. Super important that you do grommeting. This was the last project I did hole punch grommets on. Oh, I think my cat opened that. Klaus! I'd appreciate if you wouldn't open my bathroom door. Anyways, so these hole punch grommets, that's what I'm calling it, they come out very easy, and if you do them with the actual like hammer, and it's easier than you think. Trust me, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I'm the type of person that needs to be told how to do something like 20 times over, so anything I can learn to do, I am pretty certain you can learn to do as well. I'm no genius, trust me. I failed half my college courses and had to like retake them several times. Very fun stuff. And then I have these little loops going into the seam, like, so I actually sewed these in as I was sewing these pieces together, and that's how it holds on. I actually like this too because it adds kind of like a snatched waist, you know, so you kind of get to like take it in a little, and it cinches your waist just a little too, which I think is like super flattering on anyone. I'll show you on the main dress too. I made my own bias tape on. It's a skill I really like super duper recommend picking up. You can get bias tape makers, but you don't always have to make full-on bias tape either. For this, what I actually did is so if this is the piece of fabric, I sewed it on here, and then I folded it over. So I don't know if I'll have a pre-recorded video of that, but I folded it over, and then I like already had the other side ironed. That under. Oh, my basting is still there. That's funny. I basted it in place. Also, this little pocket thing is fake. I just added a little flap. I was working on this for only 4 days. So making your own bias tape is not as hard as it seems. It's quite simple. It doesn't always have to be full-on bias tape either. You can strategically iron and manipulate the fabric to act like a bias tape if it's going to be closed off anyway. And I think that creates a really clean finish. So I did the ends of the sleeves with bias tape. At some point I stopped following the pattern instructions and just kind of said, I feel it should be this way in my gut. And I just did that. So that's kind of what happened on the sleeves, is I decided this is how it should be in my gut. And when it came to lining, I think the pattern creator suggests that you line the sleeves. I chose to not. I left it open because this material is synthetic, and if you are not super duper into fabric science yet, which you should totally get into, it's super cool. Any synthetic materials aren't as breathable, so like linen and cotton that are natural based, very breathable, so you can, you know, not get as stinky. Put on like a cheap Target shirt for like, that you know is synthetic, for like a day, and the next day wear like a natural linen cotton shirt. Wear deodorant of course both days, but there's a difference. There's a difference. You'll notice it, you'll sweat more, you'll feel like ewy. So this is a synthetic lining, and because of that I was like, obviously the suede around it's synthetic too, and there's so much synthetic material in this jacket that I was like, I'm gonna sweat and I'm gonna get stinky. So I actually really wanted to leave that a little bit open, so I finished this off tank top sleeve so I can minimize the amount of synthetic fabric around my armpit basically. I'm really grateful for that because I didn't do that in my Aegis cosplay, and it was like a similar setup, and I got so sweaty, ew. And then sweat is normal, I don't know why I'm saying ew, but I got really sweaty, and then with this I really didn't get that sweaty, so that was like really, I don't know if that means anything to you guys, but I care about that a lot at conventions, and that's a personal decision I chose to make. Changes I would make on this, if I made it again, I wouldn't rush it. I would use a denim. I don't think my sewing machine can handle a denim, so maybe I'd use this material again. It's really thick, so I like it, so it gives that same kind of effect as a denim jacket, I think. Most of our sewing machines probably can't handle it, which is the unfortunate reality. I would add little stars to the top of this, which I still can do before I wear it next. In the grommets with a actual like grommet hammer, with an actual like hammer and tools rather than a little hole punch thing. Also, this is sewn down going through here, so it's like a fake belt loop, just to create that effect. The way that these hang down is this comes to this point and it just droops, and I noticed that in the artwork, so I actually added a little tack right here so it would just naturally kind of hang that way. Sewing is not always about your sewing machine. Don't forget, hand sewing is super duper important for things like that. Adding that little one tack right there manipulates that whole thing to hang just like in the video game, because I think especially as cosplayers, we're cosplaying things from video games and anime, which are just like wildly unrealistic, physics-defying things. So like little tacks and hand sewing things can help manipulate the fabric to stay there how you want it. Before getting too into the dress, I do want to mention the Final Fantasy creators were so practical. If they're gonna make a character with a dress, I actually really appreciate how they did this. The dress is at the perfect length to not be like whipped around by like wind and all that, and it's not too long to where you like trip over it. And the jacket, like legitimately, this convention was in Seattle, okay? If you don't know a lot about Seattle, it's rainy, it's a little bit cold, but it can also be sunny and warm, and it was feverish when I was there. I don't know why I have my arm up there. It was so feverish. Like, it was going in between like 50 degrees and like 80 degrees, it felt like all day. And sunny, rainy, cold, hot. So it felt like I had a fever all day, even though I didn't. It was just the weather, you know? So because this cosplay, like, the way that Aerith was designed, it was so practical that in Seattle I was like, jacket on, jacket off, dress. The dress is comfortable, you know, and it just felt very easy to wear to a convention. So now let's move on to the dress. So I always start with the lining layer when I'm making something, so I can check fit. When I'm making, I do make a mock-up first, but I double check with the lining usually. I actually added little cup pads. I do that to all of my cosplays pretty much because I'm pretty flat-chested too, so it's not like too inconvenient for me to do. But this is like no different really than a triangle bikini if you think about it. You know what I mean? So I added in some cup pads because it's so like right there. I figured it would be really hard to fit a bra with, and the second I'm like, ooh, will my bra straps be showing? And the second something basically has like spaghetti straps or anything that would make wearing a bra with it really difficult, I just basically add padding in if I can. I don't want to have to be like ha 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 all day. And the lining is basically same exact. I just took the pattern for the dress and I just replicated it and then put it on the inside. In the lining though, I added horsehair braid, which is like forces the skirt to basically have a little shape on the bottom, which if you look at Aerith's skirt, part of the reason I didn't order this cosplay, by the way, was for this very reason right here that I'm about to talk about. Her dress, unlike a lot of cosplay companies think, it doesn't look as narrow as a typical 8-line dress. Like, it doesn't just go whoop down. Like, it's not that boring. I think it's like, it's somewhere in between a full skirt and like your simple little like dainty little A-line skirt looking thing. But every cosplay company I've seen that has made this cosplay has made it like this little tiny skirt. But if you follow her around in the game, or if she's in your party and she's next to you in the game and you watch her walk around, that dress is moving. That dress is like, is full. It is like you're walking behind her and there's a wind and everything, and it's gorgeous. It's really beautifully designed. I think I played the game right before making this, so like I was a little closer to the game I think too than the average person who played it a while ago. This horsehair braid really helped add to that nice little like wave at the bottom, the fullness, because it retains a shape basically to stay like that the entire time you're wearing it. And that was just gorgeous because it's gone through the wash like what, twice now. I wore it after Sakura at Con too at a point. I forgot when. Oh yeah, for a photo shoot. So I've worn it a few times now. And I've washed it several times. It's held up fine in the wash and it is, I freaking love this stuff. Then the outer layer of fabric, considering I basically just said copy and paste. I don't know if you guys just heard Bolt scream in the hallway, but it's like my cats eat in an hour, and the hour before they eat, they get freaking crazy. Anyways, this in between layer that none of you probably knew was here. I used this white fabric. This is a white cotton twill, I believe. A really light twill though, like not too heavy as you can see. It's the same material as I used for my On Halford from Sugar Apple Fairy Tale, which I wish more people watched, but so very few people did. Because this is a chiffon, it was very sheer, so obviously there would have to be a layer in between. And I wanted a thickness, that fullness I was talking about of the skirt. Chiffon and a cheap lining would not be enough for that really nice fullness. And because twill does have a nice weight to it, I think it really added some fullness to the skirt. And I actually chose white instead of pink because this, okay, I don't know if this is gonna be too noticeable on camera. So here's the clear fabric, right? Here's what it looks like with a white background, right? You see those details really nicely. Background. I feel like the shapes almost disappear a little bit, which I mean, like, it makes sense. So I actually wanted to bring out the shapes more and make it more of a pastel pink. I think you could see it right here, like the line down the middle. You see that difference? And this layer actually got flatlined. And if you're not familiar with flatlining, it's where you take two pieces of fabric and you layer one on top of the other and you make sure that they sit flat, and you sew around the edges so they basically act like one piece of fabric. It takes some careful attention. It's like not something that, I don't know, maybe I struggled with it a little when I first picked it up, but it's looking really clean now. So I'm pretty happy. That also helped so then I could have the cups in and you wouldn't see them as well. Lining really helped here. And then I wanted to leave, let's fold this inside out now. I didn't flatline the fabric on the skirt though, so it could all drape and flow naturally. So skirt pieces, no flatlining, top pieces, flatlining. Full and pretty that skirt is. I love skirts, I love dresses, okay? I sewed this one bodice piece, and then I made the skirt, and then I put the top and bottom together, and then sewed all these buttonholes because her dress is held together by a bunch of buttons, which is maybe the one thing that I have some trouble with, because I do not like when dresses close up the middle with buttons, because you're sitting down and stuff, and then if you slouch or anything, the buttons like gap a little, you know what I mean? So it just feels a little bit odd. I don't prefer it, but it looks really cute. If I was more intelligent when I made this, I would have sewed these straps in between the lining and twill layers, but instead they're sewn onto the inside, just on top, which is really unnecessary. It would look a lot cleaner the way I just mentioned. And this edge is another bias tape that I made with actually leftover pink material I had lying around, and I used that same material at the same width to just kind of make a little strap. I think I would have liked a little bit more pastel pink, but I believe hers is a little bit more vibrant too in reference. But now it's been a minute since I've made this, so I don't remember. Because the top was finished of this, I just sewed it on to the outside layer, quite literally. All of this is just quite literally sewn right onto that outside layer, and because the underside is white, you can't see any of the stitching or anything. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that in-between color. To combine them, instead of folding them inside out like you normally do with lining, because this entire edge is finished in bias tape, I just left them kind of like a corset. I quite literally just sewed all of them together instead of doing anything fancy with the lining, like folding it inside out and stuff like I normally would on a dress. I just sandwiched them all and then closed the edge in this bias tape so it looked nice. I did serge all the edges. After one straight stitch, I added a little serged edge Because finishing off a lot of, on more sheer fabrics, I usually prefer to French seam it, but this wasn't so sheer that I felt like I needed to do that, and like I said, short timeline, it makes sense to just run it through a serger. So yeah, I think it turned out really, really well. And there's so many YouTube tutorials out there and helpful things, and just like all the sewing techniques used for this, or any cosplay you make, really keep in mind, those can all be learned. Like, if I learn them, anyone can. I genuinely believe that. Don't let people who like to make things sound really scary make you think that everything is scary, because it's not, and you are perfectly capable of it, and even if you don't have the resources, you'll get there. Just because I have an overlock machine for serging the edges doesn't mean you have to serge the edges. You can always use a zigzag stitch, or you can French seam them. There's always another way to do it. Trust me, I didn't have all the resources that I have now until after college, and I studied computer science, so that kind of helps. The biggest pieces of advice I can give that are kind of just for anyone sewing: don't forget hand stitching exists and it is super useful. Them first, and then don't forget ironing. Ironing will make sure that everything looks so clean. But yeah, I hope that this tutorial helped. If you want to make an Aerith cosplay, DM me, comment, reach out, email with any questions that you do have. I am always here, and I hope that I can help lift other people up, so then maybe you'll take something that I did and you'll do it 5 times better, and then you'll tell me how you did it 5 times better, so then I can learn from you. That's my goal in the end. So I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for watching. Next week I'll be doing my work in progress vlog for how I made the Costa del Sol Aerith outfit. So I will see you then. Have a lovely week.